Today we are kind of rejoined with Dr. I call him Dr. Andrew Scheim. Andrew is a holistic practitioner based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And if you have not been watching the posts on my page, I've kind of been nagging you with some of his articles, some of his videos. And today we're going to talk very briefly about some of the things that have always drawn me towards Andrew, but I'd like him to start with a simple introduction and just let him talk about what his gift of healing is and how he it has been successful, perhaps personally as well with his clients. Thank you, Andrew, for being generous with your time and joining me today.
Thank you, Debbie. We've known each other quite a while. Met through Debbie was a devoted trainer. Her vibe, I really appreciated her spirit to give, regardless of the politics of the business.
Yeah.
And she's always been passionate to share and educate, and we share that in common. Probably I'm a little more of a complex creature because I did a lot of intense body work with clients. My perspective is multidimensional and actually got out of body work because I found that I got really deep into trauma. Many people were not really ready for that or signing up for that. So I have my background is advanced body worker, a holistic educator. I've been at this a long time. I come from many, many perspectives, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, naturopathy. Depending on who I'm talking to as a practitioner, I kind of have to adapt. I will say one thing too that drives me a little nuts, and I'm sure this is true probably for everybody out there listening to this. The word holistic medicine is a bit of a problem because and this, I'm not trying to start off with a complaint, but you're looking for solutions. So typically people get paid in one particular thing or another thing. So it's very hard to get integrated point of views. I've always sought the many point of views, and I've always desired to learn, but it's not easy. And there's so many different perspectives. And how as a layperson can you even begin to try to figure this out? So you get influenced by one person or the other, and you're always hoping that the practitioner will do something for you. And I am a big advocate of trying to educate people as much as possible and then develop a home kind of practice, gather up the tools. So today I'm going to be as honest as possible about the challenges and kind of give you that a taste of the multidimensional point of view. I do have a YouTube channel that it goes through a lot of this also. So number one, this is a fascia week, and I spent many years in body work where I would always say the work was in the fascia. In other words, I did craniosacral, I did acupuncture, but the fascia was the work. And when fascia gets into a fixed pattern, it's very difficult to break it down. And I wanted the first insight. Fascia, the whole body is a response to your subconscious trauma programs. Now, what that is, that can depend on who you are and how you want to believe this. But there's a system of healing, and I would encourage you to Google it and look more deeply into it, called Ho'oponopono. And basically what they're saying is you're replaying your ancestor memories. That's one of the core things. In other words, literally like a computer, that guy came from another computer. You have these very heavy duty subconscious trauma memories. You replay it literally in your system, and the body is what is, sort of the expression of those memories. That's essentially a close model to what I believe. Now, Chinese medicine is a way of saying, when you get stuck with a memory, how does it get blocked? So if you have a river and you throw a big boulder in the river and the river gets blocked, you can call that chi stagnation, or a key memory. Your great great grandfather, something traumatic happened, it replays in you. That's the boulder. The river stops flowing, you feel stuck, and you don't know why you feel stuck. If you can even begin to understand that this is where it gets challenging, because how the heck in your conscious mind can you ever identify? You can't. but you feel it. So it's very important to follow the feeling body. The feeling body is expressing very profound memories. And if you notice in your body where things get stuck, and this is how I would go about it. If you were here and I did a body work session, we would explore those very deep blockages and where you're just like this.
Okay.
So the system locks down. When it locks down, the fascia kind of, the way I describe it is the acupuncture meridian is sort of the metaphysical. It's actually reflecting the memories playing, and then they spin in. They come in like a point. If you had a screwdriver and a piece of leather and a piece of wood being the bone is the wood, the leather is the fascia, and the meridian is this psychological recording of the information.
Yeah.
It's going, it crimps the fascia. So you have no idea why your fascia just did this.
Yeah.
But the thought is, it's all from the subconscious. Now, everyone's going to ask the same question. If I can't know the memories, what can I do? And this is why somatic trauma work can be very, very powerful, especially if you're paying attention while you're doing it. And I do this all the time. So what vibrate? We came together on vibration therapy. When you tremble the body, you are actually trying to get these in a way, the energy of where the memories are grabbing on, you're trying to break the grip of the grab, so to speak. Now, I will say, depending on, I have a very powerful, we get into G-force, and how much trembling do you need to release the trauma? And by the way, another quick thing is that animals tremble when they go into freeze trauma. They tremble their bodies to come out of freeze trauma, or they die. Humans are stacked with subconscious memories upon subconscious memories. We're all so programmed. I mean, it's kind of comical. How do we come into these identities that are just stacked with trauma loops that go nowhere? But that's our reality. You buy into someone else's trauma belief,
Yeah.
and then they bought into someone else's trauma belief, and everybody's believing insane things, or they're fighting somebody else with their beliefs. But if the energy goes like this, your system, you have one wisdom. Your body's telling you this doesn't feel right. So how do you, number one, potentially set up a dynamic to shake off the trauma? Now, keep in mind, the fascia, again, is part of this system of subconscious grip. So when I had people on the table, I could tell if they're willing to possibly let go. What is going to suggest a letting go consciousness? Now, some people would talk about meditation. The somatic school is more like just tremble and feel it, notice it, work with it, pay attention to your body, keep trembling, keep noticing, and try to understand you're dealing with stacks of information. So don't try to fix it. Don't go to a therapist and they told you at 6 years old, this happened and that's why you're like this. That's bullshit. Because it's so much more stacked than you'll ever know. Now, one of my core practice every morning is to tremble my body on a vibration machine. I'll take a vibrational tool, maybe hit my body and add another level of vibration, go around my body and explore where the tightness is. And then I'll rock on a chi machine and I'll take a vibrational tool and I do what I call emotional body work on myself. So let me give you a quick example of how this works and how you can get to know yourself. Now, understand this, the traumas keep coming and coming. Ho'oponopono says you'll be cleaning for many lifetimes, much less this life. So if you can just get functional with your subconscious and understand that these memories are huge and long and deep, while you're in this level of existence, let's put it this way, this plane of reality, this is just the homework you're going to have to do. Then you'll not get like, oh, I did it, I feel free for 20 minutes, and then, oh, it's back. Yes, it will come back. And you'll keep working it, but you'll see signs of improvement. You'll get, like for me, all my sports injuries pretty much disappeared. My digestive system works better. So you have to make a chart and see what's improved. Don't expect the trauma to go away, but see what's changing. The more you can, this is a beautiful statement from Dr. Yulin in the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono. The most important relationship in life is with your own subconscious, period, which he calls the inner child nature. The inner child, he said, carries all the memories back to the beginning. So imagine the state of the world. We're all feeling it today. Oh my God, you're literally like a receiver for all, depending on how sensitive you are. I'm pretty damn sensitive. You could be picking up on a whole community of people, or you have 10 relatives and you're feeling their pain. You're an empath, basically.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to figure out, like I have to figure out, I do a lot of this work because there's always information coming in. Another way of looking at it is how often do you run a cleaning utility on your computer and dump the data? All the time, every day. Well, in life, we got to do data dumping all the time.
Yeah.
So that is in a way, you've accumulated all this data or all the subconscious bullshit.
Yeah.
And now, if you could dedicate yourself and make one decision in your mind, my identity is not all this information that I think is me, that I was enforced. I said, this has to be me. No. This is just fragments. The me is a fragment of a bunch of information. Most of it is traumatic. So commit yourself to cleaning data. That's what they say in Ho'oponopono, meaning like a computer. You have no problem running clean 1,000 temporary files. Shed all this information. What's left? Oh, your connection is unstable?
No, you just came back. You just came back.
Once you understand that the shedding game, the emptying game, and in Buddhism they call it empty the mind. So there are, in Christianity they call it purification.
Okay.
Judaism, my God, that's why I'm so screwed up, because in Judaism they worship the mind and you got to gather up a bunch of information. I'm not saying there are schools of thoughts where you're supposed to prune the mind, but pruning the mind is everything. I mean, I've seen extreme teachings where they just say, like this one guy, Ramana Maharashi, says the mind is a terrible thing. In other words, it's a plane of aggregation of information that goes nowhere. So end the mind, be quiet, be in stillness. Now, if you ever have experienced grace, that kind of sense of the pure stream of energy, that's a clue. You want to be in that being state, no content of mind whatsoever. But if you haven't, don't worry, you can get there. But you have to understand that the content, if you're living qualitatively, this showed up in body work all the time. It's all the blocks, all the blocked energy. It's always getting rid of the blocks, back to the smooth mountain stream, not the 20 boulders in the stream. Every time I hit a boulder, it's like you're preying on dissolving that boulder, because the boulder, and this is, by the way, in Jewish mysticism, they have a very fascinating term about how the light is surrounded by a shell. They call that a klipot, and there's a mystery to breaking the shell, and then the light comes forth. Okay. So you have these memories, aggregate memories and some people would say past lives, however you want to believe it. Your internal computer has gathered up all this strange storylines, and it feels very dark, and yes, it is, because it's obscuring you from the light. All these little subtle storylines in you, and this is the mystery of existence, need to be looked at as much as consciously and awakenedly as possible. But you have to understand and decide if this is who this consciousness model resonates with you. I absolutely knew it resonated because this is the only way clients would get well.
Okay.
And I also know when a client walks in the door, they're not ready because their minds are telling them, no, this is who I am. And by the way, I wrestle with this all the time. I have to work this because my mind has created an identity around false attachment, so to speak. All these memories, this is you. And now I realize, no, these are just events where I developed a false storyline. Okay. Events upon events upon events.
That's a great way of explaining it.
So now the work, this is the philosophy, because it's very important to understand. If you don't embrace that the subconscious memories, and this is Ho'oponopono, so that's why I like to refer you to it, because they have a lot of good teachings, but you have to go a little deeper because the bodywork side of it is not well known. There's a famous prayer, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me. But the original Ho'oponopono teacher was a body worker.
Okay.
So she got the dynamic of when you get into a body and the subconscious starts to play its heavy stuff about how to start the conversation.
Okay.
So vibration therapy is an organic way to access your entire matrix of the chaos of your subconscious and just let it free form start to let go. So even if you say to yourself, let go and notice if it's tight in your belly, okay, now you can add it, let's say it's tight in your liver, your belly, and I don't want to get too in depth about Chinese medicine, but I'll give you a quick
Yeah.
example. Liver is anger, spleen, stomach is worry, lung, colon is grief. If you feel a lot of grief, tremble on your vibration machine, take your massage tool and start working the lung colon. Now you can get deeper and learn points, but first notice grief. Oh, lung colon. There are some powerful, like here is a very powerful, if you're trembling on the vibration machine, you can even hold yourself or take your vibrational tool. This is the triple burner meridian. It has in somatic experiencing, they tell you to give yourself a hug.
Yeah.
This is a this is the big letting go meridian. You're going to discover if you do this that there's very charged up energy centers in your body. And so get to know the hot spots. Like, and don't freak out. If it's emotional, cry. If you're feeling anger, watch the anger. As you start to explore these, it's almost like a musical instrument. It's like I always say, it's like you're playing blues guitar. You lean into those notes, you really ring them, like a
Yeah.
good blues guitarist. I was a musician, so I get it, and I
You
do
are a
see.
musician.
Well, no music scene anymore, but I mean, literally playing those key deep notes. If you look at your body as a musical instrument of sorrow, of ignorance, whatever you want to call it, and you hit certain key notes, you're going to get closer to your spiritual true nature. So you got to pay attention. If it's painful, don't overdo it. And here's a suggestion. Anytime you hit a very heavy emotional place in your body, this I keep pointing here, this is lung one for grief. This whole clavicle region is loaded up, the throat, trying to speak, you can't speak. This is all in cranial sacral. They call this a respiratory diaphragm. It's just a huge energy center. All these points in here, here, here. Everywhere you go, there's this like huge opportunity to get into your emotional being and these deep memories and start to ring them. Now, the ringing is very interesting. Just like if you played a note on a blues guitar and everybody goes, "Oh," you're kind of leaning into those notes in your body that carry memory, heavy memory, subconscious memory. So really, your body is like a fretboard of a sort.
Okay.
The bones, I always say the bones in cranial sacral, I learned this in body work, are like drums. The fascia is, if you think of a drum, the bones are like think of a drum. The fascia is the skin over the
Top.
drum that screws in that screw in the meridian points, and the drum itself. If the skin's too tight, the drum won't resonate. So you're trying to loosen up the fascia, get to those key heavy duty screws, get them. You're trying to attune the whole instrument
Yep.
so that the drum will play properly. Our drums are playing like this.
The
You can
resonance
never,
is very different.
you can't relax.
Yeah.
We're like a tightly wound drum. So
Makes
understand that the fascia and the screws, I mean, this is an analogy I've always used. Now, what's driving those screws in tight is your mind and memories. But if you address the body of the drum, you'll get back to the memories organically and you'll never know what they are.
yeah. So it's
But
not a
you will.
matter of I'm doesn't he have the best way of explaining things in Walmart terms? So what you've kind of I get it all the time long before I even understood what it was, but I call it the emotional detox. Why do I feel so emotional, or why am I sobbing after a vibration plate session? Even though my pain has been relief, why I should be happy. This speaks to it's the tune that you've described perfectly. And a lot of people out there, it's not about understanding what the memory was, it's how to manage the effects it's imposing upon your body.
Or how to let the body organically clean the memory from a musical, non-thinking place. Now,
Perfect.
this is also something that goes to something called sound current medicine.
Okay.
Sound current, this is in the yogic tradition, and this is also in the Bible. But what is going to clean the bullshit of the mind with its stack of memories? You got to find something that's deeper and cleaner and purer than the mind, and that is pure sound. If you can get to so you're trying to use a sound communication, you're listening to the sound of the sorrow, and then you're trying to get to the divine sound to respond. Now, Ho'oponopono makes it very clear. The process, what they call cleaning the subconscious, is where you're setting up a petitioning conversation with divinity.
Okay.
You can never respond. Now, this is a problem that I have personally because I'm a Gemini and my mind's active, and you can't think your way. You think, oh, I got it. No, the only cleaner is that source, which is totally pure to begin with.
Okay.
It's not corrupted, and I've seen this in body work. There's a wave forms that show up that have what I call no subconscious content, and that they do the cleaning.
Okay.
So you're trying to set up a conversation between the part of you that's totally purified and your content self, which is full of shit.
Okay.
So you might even know you're full. You say, well, I believe this, I believe that, I don't want to believe it. But what's the language that's going to free
Yeah.
us? And this is the great mystery for all of us. But I find that the somatic musical sound work will petition the purity of who you really are to activate and kind of change hopefully little by little, layer by layer, whatever,
Hmm.
purify that false identification the mind, which
Okay.
is the mind really wants to go home, which means what is home? Home is always here, but we don't know that. So home is a quality of consciousness that isn't torturing us, but the mind is the many, and we talk about the many and the one. Sound is a very profound way of setting up that communication. And body work, what vibration is sound. Now you got to focus the vibration to the sorrow notes, so to speak, in the body, or the sorrow. Those memories are deep and they've been around a long time. That's my sense. So that's why they feel very real. But just because they've been around a long time doesn't mean they're spiritually actually liberated. They're just
Yeah.
hanging out for a million years.
Yeah.
So think of it, I always say back 10 million years ago, the mind is the mind is the mind. It's still the same BS.
Yeah.
But nobody ever thought this is like, well, I got to clear this trauma memory that's in me from 10 million years ago or a million years ago. So
Yeah.
it's a qualitative practice. If you understand that you're trying to go from a content sort of, the mind is very powerful, but if you start to recognize its dynamic and challenge your mind with this practice, you are essentially calling to the part of you that's not conditioned. So
Okay.
the conditioned self is trying to access the unconditioned self, which we all have something of. And I know this sounds a little crazy, but even the fact that you're in suffering from the conditioning tells you there's an unconditioned you, because otherwise you'd be happy as a lark
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
psychopath.
Right.
So the suffering is a good sign because it's saying, well, this ain't really where you're at.
Yeah.
So this is a getting to know thyself practice, and don't expect because we've been at the sorrow game since probably day one for many of us. I mean, I always laugh about psychology postulating these beautiful, loving parents. I would say 90% of people had pretty screwball parents who were completely unawake spiritually. Now that I'm not saying, some people say, "Oh, I had a great dad. He was good to me." That's great. I think you had some good, decent parents, but
But many can
many
relate
of
to
us
what you're saying,
know.
for sure.
Again?
Many can relate to what you're saying, for sure.
Right. I mean, I have forgiveness from my parents, but they came out of a generation of great trauma. Their identity, that generation, they didn't look at inner work as the way to self-identity. They looked at you do outer, and you follow this crowd, you do this pattern. So there was always that outer
Yeah.
force. And if you have a tribe and you're identified with your tribe, that can be good. Most tribes are nuts, but if you get a lucky tribe, tribal consciousness can be great, and your identity could be solid,
But you
and
still
you
got to do
identify.
the individual work first.
Well, no, I once had a therapist that said, the whole point of life is individuation, but that's extreme too, because at the highest level, you want to identify with a cosmic spiritual tribe, which is beyond, 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 if you can get there. But I wouldn't say individuation would be my term. I mean, yes, you want to break from programs and rebel and do all that, but ultimately, I know Bob Dylan had that one song, you got to serve somebody. That's why we always are trying to latch on to something. For Christian, we say, well, Jesus will save me, but it's really a desire to still identify and hopefully, I mean, it's a great image, and I'm not, Buddhism, they do the same thing. But you're trying to get to the who you really are, and are we ultimately spiritually, okay?
Yeah.
And the mind has really done a number as us humans. We've really created quite the programming. So just pragmatically speaking, I just the vibration helps to organically get to memories and organically clear them. Adding vibrational tools will do the same. I want to show you something I recently purchased. I want to get to a couple more things first.
Sure.
If you're toxic, so Chinese medicine deals with organ systems. We have some common sense things in holistic medicine. If your colon is toxic, you're going to have a lot of problems health-wise. So cleaning the body is important, but if the memory is doing this to your colon, if the memories are gripping your colon to death, you can do all the cleaning you want, but if
Good.
it's still in a grip
Yeah.
state, you want to always work at the trauma. But then, if you have consequential buildup of toxins, you need to understand how to do cleanse. This is where it gets much more complicated. Your body's been like this forever. Now you got health problems because your organs are all
Yeah.
choked out. But there are ways to deal with the consequential damage of, let's say, if you have colitis or Crohn's disease because you've been doing this in your
Yeah.
colon forever, or you got scoliosis because you've been like twisted around, or you got liver disease because you're pissed off. So
No.
there are pragmatic programs that I teach that are really good, particularly for the colon, and it's not easy. And then there are also, I want to say this, I come from a people where there's a lot of genetic sorrow. So you can be born with genetic weaknesses, lung weaknesses, kidney weaknesses, colon weaknesses. So you kind of have to understand where your weaknesses are, and then when you target any healing program, besides the trauma
Yeah.
piece, which is always important, how do I, if something's creeped up on you for 20 years, how do I treat that?
Okay.
So how do you treat a colon? How do you treat the kidneys? How do you treat the liver? And so I call this consequential damage to heaps and heaps of trauma patterns that go back ancestrally. Like the Irish have certain patterns, the Jews have certain patterns, the Chinese, it's endless. But you'll see genetic disorders in a ethnic background.
Fascinating.
But it's but all I'm saying is there are ways to that goes more naturopathic. So I have a naturopathic hat that I wear. If you call me and you, let's say, have lymphatic blockage, Lyme disease, Candida, we're going to do a
Yeah.
different program to how do I get this out of my body. So there are, beyond trauma, colon health, gut immunity is about 70% of your immune system. That's a huge part of holistic medicine teaching. And the how to get there is much more challenging because there's a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
you got a piece here and you try this and then you try that and it doesn't work. So I do have a simple playlist and some videos that explain how to do a synergistic program to really get on it. You can't just do this and that. So you have to break down some of the basic functionings like the lymphatic
Yeah.
system, the colon, the organ systems. I mean, these are basics. You need organs to function. How do you clean the kidneys? How do you clean the livers? How do you get the colon functional? How do you get the lymph functional? And then what about neuroendocrine, as I call it? In other words, let's say how do you even assess the thyroid?
Yeah.
In America, they're misdiagnosed all the time. So how do you find the right doctor to figure out if you're low thyroid? It's like your thermostat in your house doesn't kick on your furnace
Yep.
and you're freezing. But the colon is kind of like the furnace and the thyroid is like the thermostat. But that's every woman I deal with, by the way, there's an 8 times higher threshold of hypothyroidism in women. That can make you feel depressed, miserable, overweight, and
Yep.
you do everything. And the doctor says, well, you're too fat, you should eat less. And all it is a thyroid issue. And you go to the wrong doctor because he says your thyroid's normal.
Yeah.
And I know some good doctors who will look at your thyroid lab work, including me, and say, you're at least in the orange zone. They don't grade it. They just go low, normal. And if you're not below low, they say you're fine, which is insane. That's like saying, your kid's got a C- in math, and you go, well,
You're
he's
doing
fine.
awesome. Yeah.
So you really need anybody who's overweight, please Google low thyroid symptoms. I know where you can get lab tests out of pocket, and I know I can know in 10 minutes where you're at between symptoms and lab work.
Okay.
But in America, they go to endocrinologists, and I hate to say it, and they check one thing, TSH. The end game in thyroid is free T3 goes to the body. You need to know where that's at. Then you need to know symptoms. And whatever, first start with the symptoms. And then if the doctor says you're fine, this is where it gets screwball. Everything screams that I'm low thyroid, but the doctor says I'm fine. So you say, well, what's wrong with me? And they put you on psych meds. There's a great teacher in thyroid, and I reason I bring this up is because you're dealing with people with weight problems. Isabella Wentz, Wentz. Please, she's a great teacher on all this. She spent 10 years in misery getting misdiagnosed. And there's a video called The Misdiagnosis Machine.
Okay. I
And
think I've
you
seen
put her
that. Yeah.
name. Please look at her stuff. And I can help you sort this out so quickly if you contact me, by the way, because it's simple. It's symptoms and a few basic lab work. There's Hashimoto indicators and maybe 3 or 4 other tests, and we know right away if you're in that zone. Um, and then there's hormonal issues. We've all heard of postpartum depression. I mean, the hormone thing is a huge piece. So I am a pragmatist. I talk about trauma, and that's very critical, and that's spiritual
Yeah.
work. But now we get down to the nitty-gritty of how do I break down my body and kind of sort things out. And that's another thing that I feel is very critical. Toxicity, environmental toxicity, heavy metals, pathogens, there's all this stuff. If the gut immunity is functioning at a high level, you're going to be way less sick. So now you're going to be better with things like
Yeah.
all the viruses and et cetera. So that's quite the game, the tinkering with all that stuff. I mean, I'm 70 and my gut is, I'm older and I can't eat as much, but my gut is working at a much higher level than when I was like 40. But it takes quite the program that I put together to get there. So I get people calling me all the time with lots of systemic illnesses. Another thing that's huge is something called inflammation. Keep in mind that if you're toxic and the body can't fight off something, your body's going to go what's called autoimmune inflammation. In other words, it can't resolve a problem. You're going to go start screwing up with some type of autoimmune disease, and inflammation is part of the process, like
Yeah.
lupus or any of the itises. You get a nerve
Right.
disease, right?
Yeah.
The itis sisters. But that means the fundamental immune system isn't doing the job. Secondary immune system's exhausted, and you start and fire is one way the body tries to fight pathogens. So it's firing up. The reason people died from COVID is the body fired itself to death, literally. So it was called the cytokine storm, and it kept firing so much fire, you burned up and died. So you can mitigate inflammation, and there's ways to do that, but you also want to get down deeper and hopefully resolve why the body's going into that to begin with. Now, trauma is part of that inflammatory
response.
Right. I mean, if you come home and your husband won't listen to you and he's sitting in his chair drinking a beer and you're angry, it's called inflammation. And now he gives you a bunch of shit and it makes it further
Yeah,
worse and you can't get resolution.
yeah,
You go into self-attack mode.
yeah.
What did it
It's
matter
very
that?
logical when you break it down into these smaller, more digestible pieces of information. But, and especially as women, it's all we're always looking outside versus within, right? Um, and it is Valentine's Day, so I want to make sure that there's no inflammation at Andrew's house either later on. He's got to go be a he's
Oh,
I wouldn't call you a
this is
newlywed, but you are married and you have a sweetheart. And
my awareness this morning. I'm very empathic, and that, by the way, if you are an empath, that information is great. How do you work with it? Again, it's very important to make your relationship with yourself number one. Don't ever doubt your instincts, your intuitions, but also understand that that other person might not be able to give you what you want at that moment. So how do you give it to yourself?
yeah,
You know, uh, God knows what's going on in any person's mind or their body. I mean, it's amazing two people could have a relationship, but be aware, be forgiving, do a lot of self-practice.
yeah.
I can do a mini session. Oh, I want to talk about a second practice that is huge for me. It goes with the vibration therapy. It's called the Chi machine. Are you familiar?
Yeah, I have a couple.
So I will rock. The reason I like this is I've had people with cancer who are almost like pretty much dying. And there's the one thing that gave them peace because it's like a divine mother energy. And I actually, when I rock on it, will lie on my side rocking and I feel free.
Interesting.
So that I call that the Buddha death posture because Buddha, when he died, lied on his side.
Okay.
But you want to let go. That's at the end of one day, you're going to go, you're about to die. You're going to let go of everything and go, holy shit, why didn't I do this sooner? So when you rock on that chi machine, I do body work while I'm rocking. Now, when I say body work, I use vibrational. I use something called a Theragun
Yeah,
or the rapid release, and I treat the fascia. This is the fascia February, right?
yeah. And many
I
here have the vibration plate and the massage gun or one or the other.
want to get into the soundboard, which is the bones. The lighter duty ones are just not going to ring the bones. And when I treated people in trauma, it's at the bone level where the real deep memories are stored. So you want to be able to kind of get into that bone and ring the bone,
Yeah,
ring the whole damn drum.
yeah.
So the points bury into the bones. So when you're okay, why the rocking? Because you're telling yourself, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm loved, and that's when you treat the shit. Well, yeah, if you had a kid who was crying, you go, "Hey, don't cry," or you picked him up and then you maybe instinctively touch the back of his head, a few somatic gestures and that saying, oh, transformation. Self-transformation of your own trauma moments where you were shunned or shamed,
Yeah.
going to come back over and over. So you rock, which is your divine inner mother, and you go, I'm okay. And then you treat the pain in the I'm okay modality. Now, some people love baths, but you can't bring a vibration machine to a bath. Now, some people are able just to be quiet and go to peace, but as soon as they get going, the stuff's there. So this is a big dilemma. Some people would say ignore the body and just go to peace, meditate, notice.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is if something's really built up in you deeply, you really want to get at it and kind of, there's two schools of thought. Sort of the more nurturing, loving, just let it be. And then the more let's go after it,
Yeah.
uh, piece. Now, if I get you on a table, I've had people that are doing this awareness thing and I get them on a table and they're so toxic. And they were in Eckhart Tolle and I'm just being pure awareness and they were a mess. So I believe you should self-explore to the best of your ability, but do it gently and go. Okay, I did want to say at some point I was mentioning something, and this is important. I forgot to bring it in. Anytime you hit a painful point, let's say it's here, Never stay there and keep digging in, digging in, digging in. Hit it, then let it be. Go somewhere else. If you
Okay.
notice, if you come back to it 2 minutes later, you're going to notice it's cleared or much lighter. So you have to know how that's a huge part of the methodology with pain. Keep moving along, check back.
Okay.
Don't just hunker down. And you sometimes I tend to be this way. You get into your grief thing and you dig in deeper. Now that's called overdoing it. So there's a balance game about activating and allowing things to leave and heal and
Yeah.
transform versus going at it too strong. I
Well,
probably
I would refer to it as a little, I just did a chat with someone else yesterday, and we don't give it a little, that break, a little bit of time to recover, to dissipate.
process the
Yeah,
process.
process for sure. No, awesome point.
Remember the memories that you're activating something that has unfathomable memories. So give the cosmic you a chance to like respond to
Yeah.
this unfathomable. There's a lot more going on than maybe the initial memory. Now, when I do this rocking on the chi machine, this is my most profound practice. It's like a life review every time.
Yeah.
I will see scenes in my life from all over, and I'll remember memories within memories. In other words, how I really felt,
Yeah.
how at I call it my spiritual or trauma posture, call it. Like you were in a situation, and you have to play along. You're a kid,
Yeah.
but you can revisit your little kid and say, "Ha ha, my awake self is now here." And I even speculate, and I've had teachers say this, that time is not this way, but it's the past, present, and future is like this. So the current wiser me visiting the older I was probably back there then, even though I didn't know it.
Doing the same thing. See,
What?
the movies might call it time travel, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Well, if you didn't have any love and light present when you were really in the deepest of the dark, you'd be dead. So
Okay.
something must have been present. The question is, was there a curtain to the future you that was trying to help you, or is there even a deeper, ultimate cosmic observing piece, of you? So maybe you're open to the deeper true you, and you're opening up all the portals. And that's why I think I do the time travel, because however you want to look at it, it's all ultimately you're BSing yourself into trauma at a root level. But you
Yeah.
have to you have to remember who you are ultimately, and the only way to do it is to start, you know, seeing these trauma loops and bringing in a sort of spiritual attention. Ho'oponopono is really about spiritual attention,
Okay.
but you can't attend to the if something is so blind and you believe in it totally and it captures you, you have to challenge its claim to what do you call it? What's claim to what would be the word that's claiming that this is the truth?
Oh, you want to validate the claim? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
you want to challenge its. There's a woman called
Authenticity?
Byron Katie who says you should challenge beliefs, challenge beliefs. If you just because you believe something doesn't mean it's true. So what you're breaking
Okay, fair.
down is the power of the belief. But it's to me, it's deeper than that. That's why I don't really like her work because it's you got into a trauma-free pattern. You didn't have a belief at 2 years old. You had patterns of energetic contraction and freeze.
Okay.
So you built beliefs upon that. So anyhow, by visiting the energetic system over and over, the beliefs will start to break down. I'm not saying you can't challenge beliefs, but I've been more of a fan of going deeper. The one way I like to describe this is you have what's called in computers the machine language. So
Okay.
the software relies on top, that's the beliefs. Underneath is the machine language. Like a fool, I'm trying to break down the machine language logic, which is crazy, but I'm trying to say, no, you're not a machine. You're not zeros and ones. You're a spiritual being.
Yeah.
So I'm introducing the machine trauma primitive, and we're built on, look, I could lay out all the physiology about the different parts of the brain,
Okay.
but you want to explore the system because it's a trauma built primitive system. That's the machine language.
what I will do, because there was a lot of language and probably some spelling that I'll need to verify with Andrew. But I'd like to put some links to some of the references in some of your videos. I have been dropping Andrew's YouTube channel and his site, but now that there's such a broad realm of resources there, is that a good way of putting it? I'd prefer to put some links today more relevant to what we've discussed in this chat, and I will get those out on the recorded basis.
And I'm going to share just one thing here.
Yeah, you had a product you wanted to share with us. So if I did my technical skills right, he'll be able to share his screen here. So show me what you want to show us. Perfect. Yeah, I'm seeing a sheet on this end. Perfect.
This is my bodywork site. Here, the stuff about Ho'oponopono, vibration therapy program.
Awesome.
This work this is like a soul journey work, which is quite fascinating. Real quick, if you think of a really nasty computer virus, in homeopathy, they have something called miasms. A miasm is the energy, or let's say it never goes back more than 7 generations, but let's say a great-great-grandmother had syphilis or leprosy, tuberculosis. There's a real psychotic trauma leftover that stays in the generational line. And what I love about it is that these will make you feel nuts, but if you recognize them and clear them, you'll go from feeling like crazy to peace. So this is the idea of a really nefarious viral leftover ancestral expression. So you can Google miasms homeopathy and then Google miasms psychological keynotes.
Okay.
So that
I'll look
if
up
you
links
start
and drop
doing
them later so you guys don't have to
this
look.
is like doing your own virus cleaning protocol spiritually. This
Okay.
is one of the most powerful things I do because you can do so much physical awakening of the information, but this is more like a fine brush, like a Da Vinci style,
Okay.
real soul journey work that, and it has a lot of I really extrapolated this way beyond the original book, but there's a book called The Emotion Code, and it's interesting, but you got to go way beyond this basic.
Yeah.
It
It's a
lays out
process. It's a process.
just I will show why since we're here, I'll just okay. So this is one of my most favorite spiritual practices, which I will do this after working with a client, by the way, because God knows I pick up on all kinds of stuff and I'm trying to sort
I'm
out
sure. I'm
whose
sure.
whose viral stuff is what, and it always seems like crazy. And so these are different charts, and I use a pendulum to discern yes and no, and not to get too out there and woo-woo. A pendulum is a sort of like an extension of your intuition, and either you're good with it or you're not. But you're trying to tune into your intuitive energy body.
Okay.
So if you trust your intuition, then you got to go, well, how do I discern? How do I ask? You ask questions, and then you ask whether you can Google how to use a pendulum. Some people do muscle testing, but how do you literally go true, false? Oh, I'm on the right track spiritually versus what your mind,
Yeah.
your mind's programming. So this is a drill down chart, so I might be asking, let's say I'm out of sorts. And this is real pragmatic. Is it a collective field? Like there's a lot going on now. Is it my field? This is my wife's field. A client's field, other. Is it a mental issue, emotional, physical, energetic, spiritual? This dimension, even beyond this dimension. So this is sort of, I'm going to ask what chart should I go to begin with? And I don't want to get too in depth, but EMDR is a way to balance it, a way to do self trauma balancing. It's called bilateral stimulation. Get the left right brain kind of back to a fluid state instead of like this.
Yeah.
And then this is one of my favorite. Like I'm trying to maybe there's an emotion or a memory playing. Is it a past life? Is it before I came here? Did I inherit it from an ancestor? These are just ways to kind of get to know your subconscious and the broad strokes. Again, memories are playing from all over the map, but if you hit sometimes there's a key memory that's just been there a long time. and you tune in and you're kind of just surveying your subconscious. Let's
Yeah.
think of it like that. And these charts help you survey the subconscious.
Okay.
Okay, and sometimes when you do this work, I had one gentleman I did it with, his whole life changed radically in one session. He went from miserable to free. It
That's awesome.
lifted, it lifted, and I only give you why I got into this work. This is very important. I had a lady with cancer. She was a client. She was blind. She had cancer in her head somewhere. I the teacher of the emotion code said you could never memories don't go back third trimester as far back as it goes. So I had her on the table. I'm doing this work, and she's about to go in 3 weeks later for the cancer surgery, and I just asked, and it came up with first trimester in the womb. Now she doesn't. I said to her, "Do you know what happened?" She said, "Oh yeah, my mother told me my twin died."
Oh,
She went in for the cancer surgery. The cancer was gone. That's when I became a believer in this work. So what I'm trying to tell you is sometimes you have a memory that's so been with you for so long and is so obscure. This, if you have an intuitive way to track, and that's key, you can't, you're literally like a child turning this is like playing a game. You have to have a playfulness and a lightness of being, and this is one place that I go light. And that means there is a part of you that's so ascended and joyful that it can help you get to
okay.
the weird stuff. So that was a quick introduction to that
Thank you
work
for that.
because there is the on body and there's the sort of general sense of the traumas and helping process that. And then there's sort of the deeper, sometimes the deeper.
Make your screen bigger again
Aha.
so I can see your pretty eyes. There we go.
Okay, so then I don't, we have a lot of tools that are functional for, like we mentioned, say you got cancer, God forbid, or Lyme disease, and we have a lot of, my advocacy is build a home clinic. Know your tools, know how to integrate them, know how they work. I always say an auto mechanic, he doesn't pull out a tool for a Ford for a Mazda. And, they know all their tools and they can do everything on all the cars. You're not going to find that with holistic people. I mean, you're going to go to the chiropractor for one thing, the fascia therapist for another thing, the naturopath for another thing, the homeopath for another thing, the acupuncturist for another thing, and you're going to go crazy.
Yeah.
So if you can get a general sense of how to build your own home clinic as best you can, and there's only about, I'd say, 5 or 6 key vibration therapy is one, medical ozone's another. I have an adjunct for that's very, very powerful for treating organs,
Yeah.
and that's a third. But it's not an endless list. I have some specialty tools. Let's say you do have a lot of brain problems. Yeah, I have some extra tools to treat the brain. But there are some very core fundamental tools, hydrogen's another. But there's only, like I'd say, depending on how old you are and how, I'm 70, so I got more stuff working now. But you can start building your tool, if you're a carpenter and you love carpentry, you're going to get something going. You're not
Yeah.
just going to say, well, screw it. Well, you got to be in this body. You got to try to stay healthy. So start building your home clinic the best you can.
Yeah.
Now,
And
don't demand that the world conform to, well, I can only afford one thing, so I'm going to get well with this one thing. And somebody then sells you the one thing and tells you, yeah, it's going to work, and you're doing the placebo gambit. Do the best you can, and there are ways to adapt. If the budget's tight, there's still ways to adapt. And, there are more affordable systems. Like if you're medical ozone, I want to suggest, for instance, I have that. It's for life. I sell a system where they give you all the support, lifetime warranty. Yeah, you pay more, but you get all that company
yeah,
support. Or you can buy one cheap from eBay, but then you're going to have to figure out how to use it on your own. So then if you don't know how to use it, who's going to teach you?
yeah.
But once you own it, it's for life. So
We
if you say I don't have the money, but you go buy a couch, I don't want to hear about I don't have the money. You decided to buy the couch over having a vital home clinical tool.
yeah.
Ozone has saved my life 50 times over, just to let you know. And it's an amazing tool for systemic diseases, especially with viruses and things
Yeah.
like that.
We
So
will.
I'm just suggesting you build the best you can, make it your number one priority. I'm going to get not a dress, not a stereo of this,
Yeah.
even put your kids aside because they need a functional mother. So if your kid's going to get used clothes, who cares? Or the latest iPhone, put it aside.
Yeah.
Tell your kid mommy's got to be healthy or you're going to have no mommy. I mean, you don't want to say it like
I
that.
understood. You know, you got to take care. I'm always lecturing. If you're not taking care of yourself, how are you going to take care of others, right?
But there's a home clinical system that's so powerful and it's amazing, but no one's sharing with you these tools,
Yeah.
much less how to use them and much less how to integrate them.
Th-
So
Thank you for raising that point because I'm going to rope Andrew into joining me again. You don't even know the voodoo tools that he has. I have some of them, certainly not all of them, and certainly not the hands-on experience. A lot of the tools he's referring to, I would like to sort of talk. We can't explain everything over a call. He works much better hands on. And for those of you that have resonated with some of the things he said today, I'm going to encourage you to reach out directly with some information I'll post. But we will talk in our next chat about the oxygen, the vibration, like what I talk about and vibration is very different than what Andrew is incorporating, his vibration, his preferences. I've always told you there's never one path. And I would like to get a little bit more specific into some of the other technologies he's using.
can I add one thing,
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
It's like I went to the best rock concert. I got to share this with you. And I recently was crippled in my knee. At the same time, I ordered a very high-end, what's called PEMF system from China, super high magnetic field. It showed up the day I was literally crippled on crutches. I went to the orthopedic doctor. Long story short, this device, it goes with vibration therapy. When you put it on your body, you will know yourself. You will know every intimate injury you ever had, every nook and cranny
Yeah.
of your body. It is so revealing of everything, and then you can treat. So I've been starting to treat again. What really got out of the treatment game because I just didn't want to get my hands in the muck
Yeah.
anymore. And I wasn't getting paid enough, and it's too long, arduous. Talk about fascia. This will go in. It'll ring fascia, nerve, bone, meridians, everything at once, because the magnetic field literally hits every cell like an MRI. And it's amazing because I bring people over, they find all their stuff, and I don't even have to do anything. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm willing to do. Even my own therapist came to see me, which is astounding because your therapist is not supposed to do that. And she went to the chiropractor, the massage therapist, the sound, the light therapy, and this is healing her. So I have my latest video. This is a huge cousin. Now let me just say this because this is important because of the vibration. When you get on a vibration machine, the wave, depending on how deep and powerful it is, will ring from the outside in and try to break through inner. But as the wave comes in, it gets impeded. This thing will go right through you and ring everything. It doesn't get impeded. Now, the key, if you Google PMF, many people sell very weak systems. As the wave goes in 1 inch, it diminishes quite a bit, and then another inch quite a bit. So you have to have such a powerful system to effectively ring 5 inches into the body.
Yeah.
This is, and I would have bought this system years ago, but they were $20,000, $30,000, and I now could get it for $5,000. So it's an extraordinary. If you have a lot of deep stuff stuck in your
Yeah.
body, call me. We can explore your town. I could even call maybe help find a clinic that has a system, or we can even hook up one of your
Yeah.
practitioners with a system. Because if you get 6, 7, 8 treatments of this thing, it can resolve 50 years of
Yeah.
issues. My tennis thing, 4 treatments, and my leg it got into all the old tennis injuries. My knee was
Awesome.
not the knee. So you get stuff stuck in your body, it will never release. I did enough body work and I was really good at it, but I knew I needed something more. I'm always looking for more.
Yeah.
So this is like the you got an uncle who's a wrestler, and then you got the other uncle who's like the grand wrestler of them all. So this thing goes so deep, and I
Yeah.
just want to talk about vibration. It's a cellular tool, and it rings the crap out of every cell in your body in a healing way. And I want to repeat one last thing. When you scan yourself with it, you'll know you'll know yourself. You'll find injuries that you forgot about.
We will have a talk specific to PEMF. Most of my followers are not unfamiliar. What Andrew is referring to, I have my own personal PEMF device, but I also promote some other ones with a couple of the companies I support. They are low energy, so that they're
Low
not
Gauss.
penetrating as deeply as the PEMF that
Well, I'll give
Andrew
you
was talking about.
one quick example. 10,000, if you start at 10,000 Gauss, you go 1 inch in, it's down to 2,500. You
Yeah,
go, I have a Gauss calculator. You can post the link and to that video, and there's a link where you can actually put in starting Gauss and then 4 inches in where the Gauss is with the calculator.
yeah,
It's called the inverse law. So unless in fact, I have a doctor who had three high-end, high-powered PMS systems, and he bought this. He just bought a second one, and he said
no
it
question.
showed everything in his body because this thing goes up to 25,000 Gauss. You
So,
need
so
that much.
power is and PEMF is pulse electromagnetic field therapy for those not familiar with it. Not to be confused, and this is another whole discussion for the day, but EMFs, electromagnetic fields, it's kind of like how I talk
It's a
about vibration
healthy
plates.
application yeah, it's a pulsing literally, it's magnetism with a pulse.
Yeah. And
But
then the
the key
frequencies
is it
used
goes through you.
in pulse
Again?
electromagnetic field therapy are very different than the frequencies coming out of your phone. It's a different thing. It's a different
Right.
exposure time. I don't want everyone going off on a tangent of destruction with that discussion. We'll find
And I
that
want to say
different.
one last thing. I own a $5,000 low end PMF system that's, I
Yeah.
think, one of the best. And I use that for sleep. So I want to make it crystal clear. This is for injury. You can get effectively very short duration, powerful treatments for people who are hopeless, crippled, and it's really deep, hard hitting. It's not smooth, hypnotic. Sleep with
Yeah.
it. You don't lie in it for peace of mind. I have a $5,000 low Gauss
Mm.
system. Well, a
Different
flexible,
application.
yes, I call that magnetic. It's great for, I use it for sleep. It hypnotizes your brain into that delta theta place. This is not that. This
I
is
use it
a
to shed this. And we'll, like I say, there's a lot of different pulse electric magnetic field devices out there. And like anything else that I talk about, it is vibration. It's not a mechanical stimulus of the muscles. It's a magnetic stimulus. And a lot of times I'm gonna say a bad word, but the bastardization of language sometimes makes it really hard to research. You think you're doing the research, but is it marketing? So Andrew and I have the
Oh
ability.
yeah, just one last thing. You go nuts listening to everybody with all their science and testimonials. I'll use a worse word, but I won't say it. F them all because they're all trying to make money and they're all going to have a shitload of testimonials and they're all going to have their doctors. I'm telling you, understand the simple. If I throw a rock at my wall and it bounces off, ooh, okay. If I take a shotgun and I blow a hole in my wall, I mean the obvious. So what I'm trying to say is I'm not. I always try to break it down to the obvious. But the problem is everyone's when they're making a buck, they're trying to sell you. So I want you to understand the mechanics of a tool, how it works, what the tool's for, what it if somebody's selling you something and they're not telling you what it doesn't do, they're essentially lying to you. I would like to see a marketing world in medicine because we're trying to serve the higher good, where you go, well, I'm selling you a little round ball, not a boulder. It's not a boulder. If you want a boulder, buy a boulder.
Right.
But no, the round ball, you can turn it into a boulder.
Yeah.
So,
And it comes in 5 colors. I know.
right. And if you woo woo it enough in your mind, it'll turn into a boulder. So I always say women have total common sense about doing laundry. Let's say you have a bunch of your kids' dirty clothes. You're not going to put it on gentle cycle. You know what you're in for. You know what to set it at. You know what soap, maybe OxyCleanse. You have all that common sense for so many tasks, but when it comes to our own self, we're just dealing with concepts, and people are just trying to, unfortunately, it's a sad world because people do have to make a living, but how many people are telling you, giving you a dynamic view and telling you the truth?
See,
So,
he is. That's why he's here today, because you guys know that I'm always about the most difficult path. I'm always about going uphill, and you know what? It's like I said in my chat yesterday with Kelly. I can't do the work for you. I can't learn it for you. Andrew can't sell you the 200 word course for 99. This takes time, and part of that is investing in learning. Part of that
and
time.
by the way, I will be very honest. If you call me, I'm gonna vet I vet everybody in in a loving way, but in an honest way, meaning I can tell if you're not ready, if you just, you don't have the money. But if, I'll give somebody some meaningful tips. I've even a very do it at home kind of cheap method. The best we're all doing the best we can, but I'm going to ascertain how sincere you are, where you're at. And I've been I'm 70. I mean, it keeps growing and growing, the healing, but it's been years and years and years, and we always let go when we're ready, back to trauma,
Yeah.
we have to bring self indications to ourselves. Oh, wow, it's like oh, look, you're kind of building you're undoing all the BS by learning a lot of skills.
And Andrew has been generous enough to share his time and a lot of resources I would ask and expect. Just don't pick up the phone and expect him to dictate to you. I'll chat with you and we'll get a few key links if you would be interested in speaking with Andrew more and having perhaps a deeper conversation about some of the things, maybe something he said today resonated with you. But have some basic understanding before you get on the phone with him, and we'll provide some links that should be viewed first, just so you have a bit of a deeper understanding. Is that fair?
Yeah, and also, please, if you contact me, please mention Debbie's name right off the bat. And
Yeah.
if you're working with somebody, you want to do a collaboration, we can always consider that. But in the end of the day, please check out some of these processes. Um, and yes, please keep in mind that thyroid issue, because I know this is
Yeah.
mostly people are struggling with weight, right?
I think that's one of the big, well, it's um weight for some. A lot of what really resonated with me as you were speaking is obviously the emotional part, but it is going to that medical office. A lot of the folks in my one group have a condition that most doctors haven't heard of, yet they always have a way of treating it. Isn't that awesome? So, I think a lot of what Andrew's talking about is, regardless of the label on your head and many of the terms that Andrew brought up between Lyme and Hashimoto's, everybody's going, yeah, yeah, yeah. Most of you are dealing with more than one thing. It's not just lymphedema or Hashimoto's, or so there's a synergistic effect and a uniqueness about you as an individual. All the more reason it can't be that cookie cutter discussion.
And I am open to group Zoom calls where we take a person, go through some stuff, and you kind of learn some of the methodology about,
Together.
okay, you got, together. And even if it's just so good. I had to learn all this pretty much on my own because it's not in the US, most of it. Um, I got lucky. I met obscure practitioners who happened to turn me on for something in a foreign country that happened to go with another therapy. And a lot of times the people I mean, I went through some crazy scenarios where I had one Russian doctor who was plagiarizing a therapy out of Russia and tell me he
Yeah.
had a great therapy. And then I had to figure out, and he wasn't even selling it. He had people with cancer, and I had to backtrack it ultimately back to Russia. Then the guy I was dealing with in Russia got thrown in jail.
Yeah, a
Uh,
lot of people don't realize behind the scenes some of the things that folks like Andrew and I deal with is just the politics of, how do I put this without getting in too much trouble? The system does not want alternatives. I mean, at the end of the day, the profitability of you being dealing with a chronic condition your whole life is by far more profitable than
Thank you.
investing. I say
Oh,
this
you
all
said
the
it, I
time.
didn't.
I do not have a license to lose. I live in the wonderful country of Canada where, um, there's a lot of things that like hyperbaric chambers, as an example, have been banned in my country for 5 years for no reason. But you can't access certain technologies here because they somebody has decided for you that they're not good for you. Yet I know so that's just one example. But when you're a kid and the big people say to you, oh, don't do that or don't look there, it's the first place you go. And I always, on a much simpler level than what Andrew has expressed today, stay curious, seek, the answers are there. And listen, if something in your heart is saying, no, 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 this doesn't feel right, this doesn't look right, my breathe, for me, I get like palpitations and my chest feels heavy. And don't analyze me, that's another call for another day. But a lot of it is your body is so desperately trying to get your attention, you just got to start listening to it.
And that I will say, one of the last things I'll say here, I got lucky because when I learned body work, that's when the wisdom grew exponentially. Because once you're in that deep on a body, there's a whole wisdom in body work. And there's many modalities, but the acupuncture was just a given in my subconscious. I knew it. I just knew it.
Yeah.
Fascia work, learned it deeply, craniosacral.
Yeah.
So once I understood that communication language and I got to a deeper, wiser language, things came my way because I was asking questions. I was saying, well, okay, I can't get to the liver right here, but how am I going to get to the liver? Or what do I do about a thyroid that's cracked? You keep asking questions and you have to keep looking.
You were curious. And the biggest point you made in this whole discussion was it's never going to be one thing. We've become a society of somehow we expect immediate gratification. And shopping has really fueled that. There's an emotion and there's a psychology when you buy things. But with our health, we've come to those same expectations where we figure we do something today and we're going to be all better by tomorrow.
Oh, and here I something popped in my head that I think would be a good way to
Sure.
approach it. Be multilingual. If you understand acupuncture consciousness, if you knew it like you knew your child, that's great. That's one language. Understand the language of naturopathy. If you understand multiple languages in holistic medicine, of which there are, they all have their place.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
what language do you go? If you're in France, you're going to speak French. Well, if you're, got a major colon problem, you want to speak colon cure protocols. If you have trauma, that's trauma. What language would we call that?
I
But
can see a whole app being developed here under the Bluesy label, but it's a good way. Again, it's that explanation. Sometimes the untangible things are hard to describe, and we as human beings are visual. So that if you can attach a visual to it, you're going to Europe. Are you going to learn Czechoslovakian? Just Czechoslovakian? Or, there's a lot of languages out there, and sometimes I know in my own, I get stuck in my own headspace of the vibration machines. I'm so specialized in that one modality. I'll be the first to say, part of the reason I bring folks like Andrew, Kelly earlier this week is I'll recognize my wheelhouse is my wheelhouse, but the understanding different languages and the collaboration sometimes of those languages is how you're going to find the best path for you, or at least start taking steps towards it.
And I will say, it's very fascinating because if you really did understand the Chinese system, it morphs into other systems, but it's a beautiful system because it includes consciousness, it includes subtlety, but then it gets into the gross. But then again, they get stuck in only you go to a Chinese doctor, you're going to get herbs and needles and that's it. And unfortunately, I will say this with any doctor, if they're trained a certain way and they make their money a certain way, especially if it's billing codes, don't expect them don't go to them and say, what about this? What about that? Know your doctors, accept their limitations, do not fight them, do not expect them to be different. If you're going to use them for like I have a great, what do you call it?
GP, general
Licensed
practice.
general practitioner. He sees me for like 2 minutes. He walks in the room, it's like 2 minutes. If I want to test, you know, I mean, it's funny, it's almost comical because he's like, well, all right. But I like lab work. I mean, I have supposedly degenerative joint disease, severe in my neck, but the chiropractor says you act like you have nothing. But I've treated the hell out of my neck.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I have to occasionally do this or that, and this new technology has helped a lot. But yes, it takes a skill set to compensate for years of playing tennis. That's why I won't go back and play tennis. So I'm just saying lab work has its place. I mean, I'm all for the diagnostics of Western medicine. They're usually not very good on
It's how you
systemic.
apply the information you received. That's
Right
not
now, I will
healing.
say this. If it's mechanical, Western medicine's fantastic. If you need surgery, if it's in the mechanical realm, they're great. If it's systemic, if it's consciousness and deeper disease, you're going to get suppressive drugs, which are going to cause more problems. So this is where I encourage you now to pivot to a holistic model and ask, how do I change the condition? This is called terrain medicine. Simple example. If you have a swamp and a mountain stream, this is my example of Chinese
Yep.
medicine. They're both water. What's the damn difference?
One's clean,
One's
one's dirty.
clean, one's filthy. Most of us are half swamp or all swamp. Now, how would you get yourself to a mountain stream state? And this is, the million-dollar question of holistic. This is called terrain medicine. How do you change the terrain of your swamp environment if you have no swamp, no microbes? I always say some of these therapies, you get out your BB gun and you shoot at the swamp and you kill the microbes.
Got cut a little short there, but thank you so much to Andrew Scheim today for sharing his wisdom. And to those of you that have joined us, stay curious. More information below in the description.